But the ones that stuck to my mind were Best Neuropsychological Award, which is to talk about today, and also the Gem of Tamil Nadu Award, which he got in 2015. He is really a gem of Tamil Nadu. I don't know what else to say because you've got everything in printed form. What attracted me is what I said. Without much ado, let me pass it on to Ms. Dr. ABS and him very much.
Absolutely no problem. And no, this suits me fine. Can you just raise it a bit? Yeah, this is better. Now, let me first thank Our Holiness to give us the spirit of knowledge. And I strongly believe more things are brought by prayers than by your effort. And Swami's grace is absolutely needed. And it's all learned from my grandfather, who gave his entire house for Swamiji, Chandrasekhar Swamiji, and spent the entire 4 months. And it is always strongly believed that medicine plus love is Medicare. Medicine without love is medicine. I would like to quote this. This is Sai Baba's, I would call it as the life and soul, and our farmer. Both Sai, we all don't know the meaning of Sai, some people. The Sai, yes, represents Sabka Malik Ek. The God is only one. The manifestations are in the world in so many names and forms. And A stands for Allah Malik, which means that He is all powerful. And I strongly believe that there is no free will. It is the will of God that makes us what we are today. And as we say that the presence, when we say present, PRE becomes the past, ENT becomes the future. Yes is a moment which follows past and looks into the future. And hence everybody should live in the present. And the present, scientifically, it cannot be answered. There is no time limit. The presence, I would like to call it as every moment is an inspiration until we expire in life. And we have seen, like we strongly believe that the brain functions according to our Vedas are not just included in the main Vedas at all. If you look at it, it's only an antenna. It gets the best and delivers the best. And it is coming from the entire area. And every voluntary moment, I would like to say this and then come to my talk today, proving that there is no free will at all. This has been done with an experiment. I want to remove my cell phone, and I do it. In this voluntary act, 1000 milliseconds before the brain activity starts, 700 milliseconds later, I want to remove my cell phone from the pocket. 300 milliseconds later, I remove the cell phone from my pocket. In other words, the brain activity precedes the voluntary intention. That means the brain occurs first, and this brain is acted upon by the thought. The spatial sequence of thought, everybody has worked out in the world. Nobody till today has worked out the temporal sequence of thought. They cannot say with certainty, the scientists, from the brain it starts. It happens at 50 milliseconds. And the instrument that is available with our international science is only 1000 milliseconds we can come up to the structure and the function of the brain. In other words, it is impossible for us to find out where the thought arises from, which amply says in our Vedas, it's very difficult. And the first thought that has to come is, I exist. Once the I exist starts, because in life, everybody wants freedom for the I, but nobody wants freedom from the I. Because if the freedom occurs from the I, then whatever you see is real. But when the I is there and then you look at it, everything is not I. Not the one that you see with I is false. When the I sees all of you, I have a lens, I have an image in front, all the object in front of me, but I see I have a lens. It should only be projected behind my lens. How is that we are all in front in my vision? That is because the definitely the image falls into the occipital lobe inverted, and my consciousness projects the image in space. That means I see a projected image. That means Advaita, finished, period. Whatever I see is unreal. And as long as the I operates, it's unreal. And when the I takes away, then we find it is a truth. Why I say this first? Our entire body depends on DNA. Can you have this? This is over. Can you just make it? Everything starts with our DNA. And this DNA is the root principle for all our life. I always call it the 4-letter word really stands in our way as a living being, CGTC. Now, it's very, very easy for us. What is actually this DNA and what is Vedas? I will just come to the Vedas first and then go to the DNA next. When you look at it, Vedas, I want to call it as a AVS, MS, and then PDF. AVS is ancient Vedic sciences. Enter into MS is the modern sciences. And then express it itself with a PDF is where the physiology is completely deciphered. And then you get to know the immortality of us. This part of the science, once you understand, then the Vedas comes only with regard to Shruti and Smriti. In simple term, Shruti, I call it what is heard. Smriti, I will call it as what is remembered. And what is remembered is the knowledge and the wisdom which comes out of Vedas, which have been teaching us to us. And when we look at it, the Vedas, who really wrote the Vedas? Nobody knows. It is impersonal. It is authorless. It is a revelation of the sacred sounds and text. Actually, exact pronunciation is Abharushya. Aparushya. The meaning is, it is not of a man, it's a superman. This is everybody knows. And when you look at it, the Shruti and Smriti, everybody walks it and then say, Shruti comes with Samhitas, Upanishad, Brahmanas, and Arankyas. When it comes into the Smriti, it is Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Purana, Ramayana, and Mahabharata. It is a telltale execution of the human mind and then the interaction with all the people. This is the basis on which the whole thing is done. When you look at it, but Veda, the Rig Veda, that is, people said that it is there from 1200 to 900 BC. Punjab have been, people accepted that it has come from that area. There are definite discussion points on this. I leave it to the Pandit Sanskrit. I always I'm not good in Sanskrit because I have not studied Sanskrit. So I'm only touching on the English side, which may not appropriately give the exact meaning, but nonetheless, it is helping me to just read it and then partly understand what is been the domain of the people who have done the greatest service for our country. And it's always felt that it occurred between the Bronze Age and then the Iron Age of Indian culture. And if you look at it, there is a one group which strongly believed in science. The literacy is more reliable than orality. But our Indian view, second view, is exactly the opposite. Orality is better than the real knowledge through the written material. But Vedas are written only after 500 BC. Prior to that, it is oral to oral. I always believe that oral transmission, the pronunciation is perfect. It doesn't get altered. When you write it, the phoneme and then the grapheme, there is a brain wise when you look at it. When we say language is perfect, when the phoneme and as well as the grapheme is 1:1. The languages which had 1:1 are number one Tamil, number one Sanskrit, and then Tamil, whichever way you can take it, and then then the German people, and of course Greek and extinction. You had the extinction of all the things that have attained perfection. Now, with this small introduction of this Vedas, now when we come into the Vedas proper, of course, this every point I'm not going to read it through this, but there are essentially 4 Vedas which are going to play a crucial role in its connection to the genes. This is a written material in which, if you look at it, each Veda has 4 subdivisions. Samhitas includes only mantras and benedictions. The Aryankas really on ritual ceremonies and sacrifices and symbolic sacrifices. The Brahmanas, of course, is going to be on the commentaries on the ritual ceremonies and sacrifices. Upanishad discussing the meditation, philosophy, and spiritual knowledge. Some scholars add a 5th category called upasanas, that is worship. These are all some of the sides from which we understand the whole Vedas. When you look at it, the DNA, then comes the deoxyribonucleic acid. This deoxyribonucleic acids, a polymer composed of 2 polynucleotide chains that coil around each other to form a double helix. What is the beauty of this? The nature can duplicate in polymer science exactly with the same way. But the human beings, when they make a polymer, one definitely amino acid is tilted. You cannot make the exactly similar polymer. And the polymer carries the JIT. But one thing I want to make sure, thought is the one for invention. Beyond thought is only creation. This point must be well understood. The scientists have got the habit of saying every invention has creation. This creation is only with the help of the thought, and you can improve your invention by another thoughts. But creation is beyond science. It's at that level. If you take, for simple example, the formation of the brain, in 1 second, 2,500 neurons are formed in the womb of a mother, and it should happen for 3 full months. And then only they get 2.5 billion neurons as a brain tissue in the human fetus inside the womb of a mother. You can just imagine, 45th day only the lady comes to know that she has pregnancy. That means half the brain is already formed. That is the beauty of creation, which we cannot do. And how the creation takes it, it is the immovable thing is ovum. A movable thing is sperm. This is exactly happening in the matter and science. The matter is inert, and when the energy moves, and then the matter and energy interpose between the two, the matter becomes the energy, and the energy becomes the matter. The person who worked for 30 years on particles, and then especially the energy and then the matter, he was not able to do it. He was using it as a particle. So when you look at it, if you remember, the reproduction of all organisms and many viruses, DNA and ribonucleic acid are very, very important. Alongside of proteins, lipids, and complex carbohydrates, polysaccharides, And the nucleic acids are one of the four major types of macromolecules that are essentials for all our human life. When you look at it from the DNA, the whole process, I must say, it goes to Tony. And he is a, we affectionately call him Tony, but his other name is Tony Nadar. He is the person who was with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who got the transcendental meditation here, and wrote this book and was given by weight gold to him. Tony is from Beirut, and he really got his PhD from the Massachusetts Institute of General Neurology. And then he did the entire work there, and that formed the basis of this book. And I don't want to read the whole thing, but remember the deoxynucleic acid and the 40 aspects of Veda that he has combined and that now given with all these things are all given when we say what is the real Vedas consists of uh, the Rig Veda, Sama Veda and DNA, Yajur Veda and DNA, Atharvana Veda and DNA, Shiksha and the DNA. And you can just see the whole process of Kalp in DNA, Vaikaran in DNA. All these things are given in the textbook. He says how he has combined this 40 aspect of Vedas with the DNA is really outstanding and astounding. And I find that the description of this to the Vedas, which they have described it long time ago. Nobody knows the exact age of Vedas. And it clearly said that even Jyotisham and the DNA they have just combined. It's very interesting factor to say Nyaya, Vasishta, Samkhya, Yoga, Karma, Miyamsa, everything has Vedanta in DNA, Gandharva Veda in DNA, Dhanur Veda, Sthapatya Veda, Harita Samhita, Kashyapa Samhita, Sharak Samhita, Shushrut Samhita, because each and every portion is a talk for about 15 minutes. Then the whole day will be there, 14 to 15, 600 minutes is impossible. But I have just summed up into some sort of sentences for each and every one. This 40 portions of Vedic literature is completely compatible with our DNA, the magic of DNA. I mean, it's incredibly impossible how, when you look at the whole chemistry, the inorganic chemistry, why it became organic chemistry, and why the organic chemistry started having the DNA molecules and then started giving the direction for the proteins. Once the direction of the proteins are given, then it becomes the automatically the frame of both. I always call it, instead of saying how are you, you can say how is your CHO, CHO, and CHON. Protein, and especially protein, lipids, and then carbohydrates. They consist of only carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen and nitrogen. Once again, it's the same four like Vedas, the same four, literally the chemical molecules which were taken as an inorganic, becomes an organic, and becomes a living tissue. And that is given in the DNA, and this double helix really gives you the clue for it. And Shushruta Samhita and then Vagbhata Samhita, all of them they say now it is very, very, very useful. If you look at the other 40 aspects, is Madhava Nidan, Sangadarita, Bhav Bar Prakash Samhita, Upanishad in DNA, Aryanka in DNA, Brahmana, what we have already seen in the beginning, and then Itihasa in DNA, Puran in DNA, and Smriti in DNA, RK Veda, that is Rig Veda Pratikshaya in DNA. My pronunciation, please pardon those who are great people in Sanskrit. Please allow me to just make one or two mistakes in the pronunciation of these names because they are all perfectionists. We are imperfectionists in English. So, Atharvana Veda, Adharva Veda, and then Krishna, Yajur, and Sama Veda. It is the 40 points that I always say that it is very good. Now, what is the best way of introduction to a life? When you look at the structure and function of natural law, this has been done by, the whole work is done by Maharishi. He has done it from our Vedas. He also claims that it is not his own. He has studied it from the Vedas and given the natural laws. And then available in the verbal form of 40 aspects of Vedas and Vedic literature is also available at all levels of the universe. And in the entire physiology of the cells, tissues, organs, and organ system, this particular DNA molecule works in the same way in a living organisms. It's always said that the four codes really carry the living organism to take it. The In the previous chapter of this particular person, the correlation between Veda and the Vedic literature and the human physiology has been shown. But our point is only coming to the DNA molecule. The chapter structure and function of DNA will be described with reference to 40 aspects of the Veda. When you look at it, they carry the information for necessary creation and maintenance of the structure and function of the physiology. This is the basic point that you must understand, that the DNA knows the entire Vedic and literature, because they just go hand in hand. It is not that this is a person and that is an object. It is actually following the rules of Vedas, and then the DNA. The real work is how this works. Inorganic becomes organic, and then tissues. It's yeah, you have got to feel it. So Schrodinger, the man who really did on this work, said becoming is conscious, being is unconscious. So once you reach this level of this understanding of the whole universe with regard to the operation of the DNA and then the micromolecules, what has been described in Vedic literature really coincides it. And the verses of Veda exist in the collapse of fullness, the kshara of A, and then the transcendental field, self-referral, consciousness, the self. Coming back to the science, when somebody said consciousness is the trick of the memory, and that is the one side of the story of the English people, and that is from the West to the consciousness. They have not understood because they could not go back beyond the thought. Because once the operation of thought starts, then you are moving away from the pure thought of consciousness, because I is the word which is seen in a normal child at the age of 18 months. Prior to that, the child will only ask, Shekarku chocolate kudu, Shekarku pap. But at the age of 18 months to 24 months, the child will say, I want this. The I is incorporated in the understanding. And we are the people who literally increases the ego of the child by saying, you are going to be the great person. You look so beautiful. So you are literally increasing the ego of the individual. And finally, it becomes very difficult because they strongly believe that the science is better than Vedas. But you must understand, in the particle physics, in the macroscopic vision, science is perfect. When you get into the quantum level, it becomes as guessing as our philosophical thinking. It is not perfect. So you must always say the most important point that they say is the A in the transcendental field, and then the self-referral consciousness, the self in which reside all the devas. They are the impulses of the creative intelligence, the laws of nature responsible for the whole manifest of the universe, devas. Those who know this really are established in evenness and wholeness of life. Now, it's always strongly believed that nobody knows why this DNA has got this. You can't ask science more than three why. First why, it can say, what is DNA? Deoxyribonucleic acid. What does it do? It produces enzyme sequence by sending a messenger RNA, and the messenger RNA gets into the ribosomal RNA, and the ribosomal RNA becomes a strong point for us to give the print for protein synthesis, and then becomes a living organism, comes out of that. But what is the message with which the DNA comes into the RNA? Messenger RNA, what message it carries? It is still the wonder of wonders in our sciences. Nobody has answered it. Now, once you come with that message, and the message is passed on, and there are people who strongly believe in science now that the tubules are responsible for that, the neurotransmitters are responsible for that, but nonetheless, why the message comes from the DNA, which carries the message called RNA, and then comes out, is a wonder of wonders. In this case, we say that the administration of physiology is available in every DNA. In other words, what we speak of physiology, it is already there in the DNA, and that only makes proteins and as well as all the other organs necessary for a life to begin with. This is a point, and DNA carries the information necessary for creation and then the maintenance of the structure and function of the physiology. If you read the physiology, we all know that 95% the C, G, and T, C, that is the sequence is for the living organism. It just after 95, when you reach the perfection, you get a human being. Otherwise, one can become an animal, the living animal. Between the animal and then is only hardly, we call it as 99.5. Up to that point, the human being only is born. And this secret of making from the DNA into RNA, and from the DNA and the RNA of the lady, especially between the ovum and the sperm, they create 1, 2, 4, and 16. Once again, the interesting thing in creation is this: when it reaches 16 and then becomes 256, the womb cannot have, because up to 16 cell, each cell is capable of giving rise to a human birth. So the nature gives once again no thought, and then they divide themselves in 256 into three portions called ectoderm, enteroderm, and mesoderm. Ectoderm becomes the skin and the brain, enteroderm becomes all our organs inside the stomach, and mesoderm forms the basis of my muscle and bone. So this comment, once again, who gives it? We don't know. It is the DNA that gives the real perpetual order, and then the RNA comes from the RNA. That's what we always say, that it's very significant aspect of natural law, the DNA containing the entire knowledge of the structure. If it does not contain the knowledge of the structure, then it cannot transmit itself into the regulations for putting into a human organism. And this is, I call it as a creation. And this creation is not bound by thought. It is beyond thought. Everybody has agreed. Once you realize what you are, then everybody is understanding naturally the creation, and then they just enjoy it within themselves. And that is one of the reasons why the cannot be scientifically studied at the present point of time. We don't know later, but at the present point of time, realizing that is once you become what you are, absolutely you become unconscious in terms of our physiology of consciousness. Now, as far as distance is seen in the dweller of the house and reverberating, all those things coming in creation are beautifully done. But when you look at the structure of DNA, this is something which is very weird. The man who imagined the six-circle calculi, he imagined the six sides and brought the organic chemistry into the human existence. It is once again what I could call it as intuition, which is well behind the thought. And that has come into it, and then they were able to give the formulas much better. So when you look at it, it's a long thread macromolecule made up of large number of small molecules called nucleotides. This is the result of sharing protons between the bases located in the center of the double helix of the DNA. Once again, the sharing, nobody gives the order because it is knowing the truth, how to do it, and it does it. It is something that the full knowledge is there in the DNA for it to do this work, so that the double helix ANA therefore winds up around a central axis made up of hydrogen bonds. If you look at the pediatric table, hydrogen comes very, 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 very early in the pediatric table. And you always say in the and it has got, the DNA has got four bases: guanine, adenine, thymine, cytosine, which are abbreviated as GATC. I always call it GATC. The GATC, four-lettered word respectively, forms the sugar and phosphate groups mainly, play a structural role on the backbone of DNA in the DNA. In other words, this nucleotides is a basis on which the nucleolus, the entire DNA operates through the RNA mechanisms. And it's wonder of wonders that G always combines with C, and always A combines adenine with thymine. Once again, what is that force that makes them to combine this with this and this and this? Unless the knowledge is given, we tend to think knowledge is in the brain, and the brain is possessed by an individual, and hence he understands it very well. No, this even all the factors, everything understood even by the basic principle. We are only an exponents of the reaching final stage because of that, and not because of what we possess knowledge in the brain. Because brain is least given importance in the Vedas. It is given as an organ. Just only in some areas they mention about the brain, but we tend to think our brain is the best. தமிழ்ல சொல்ல போனா மனிதனை இயக்குவது மனமா மூளையா மீன்ஸ் மனம்தான். The when you look at the triplets and codons, this is the structure on which the whole Vedas hinges on. Now, a triplet is a specific sequence of three bases. Since there are four different bases, the total number of possibility is a triplet is 64 all. Possible permutation combination 4 into 3 units. These 64 triplets are at the basis of the entire genetic information. See, this is the beauty of nature. You can call it beauty of nature, and actually the nature is literally surrounded by the energy system, and this energy makes it into the particle and then to the matter. Whereas I always call it Chachidanandam to be remembered here. Chachidanandam, Chat means it's only a latent energy. When it becomes chipped, it becomes a kinetic energy. Once the kinetic energy starts flowing beautifully, Anandam comes with the body, and the whole picture of Anandam is removed by our Rudra, where they say that, and then finally the realization comes. They form the five principles of what we can call it as Brahma. But to say it in the other way, I always call it ABC. A for Allah, B for Brahman, C for Christ. All of them operate on this only DNA principle, which also know what is the real projection of its own function, which are through the number of bases needed to make up the 64 triplet is 64 into 3 becomes 192. You can just give a mathematical imagination to this structure of DNA, which is the root basis of our entire human being existence. Now, triplet and codons, of course, the second step, people who are interested in the physiology, of course, you'll understand this. The codons, the sequence of triplets within DNA is transcribed and into messenger RNA, which I told you before, as a sequence of codons. These codons are ultimately translated into specific sequence of amino acids, and the amino acid sequence lead to the formation of peptides. From the peptides, the proteins and the enzymes that build an orchestra of DNA physiology. He concentrates on the physiology. We always say physiology is the principle of medicine. Anatomy is the grammar of medicine. Biochemistry is the life of medicine. So when you look at it, this actually involves the whole four codons that do not code for amino acids is called a start codon. It acts as a reference point, the starting point of an emergency of any information from DNA. It is like a silent space or gap in a text defining where to start a word, a sentence, a paragraph, and a chapter. The other three codons are called stop codons, which are the punctuation that say where a sentence of a paragraph ends. All information coded in the DNA is begun by the same start codon and stopped by the codon, which I call it as the stop codon. So beautifully, the DNA has got a stop codon and it has got a start codon. So if you look at the Vedas, you once again remember that the classical one is learnt, another is remembered. So this remembering is there in the codon itself to make you what you are in existence. When you look at it, of course, this Maharishi is component of RK Veda. This requires a very tedious understanding of the people. But remember, Aparashya Bhashya reflected in molecular biology. When you look at it from the DNA, you get into molecular biology. And the organization of DNA and its coding system follows the same sequence for the evolution of natural law as brought to light by Maharishi in this commentary on the Rig Veda Bhashya. The entire physiology is made up of only three tissues, if you look at it. That is ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm, and which correspond to the values of Rishi, Devata, and Chandas, that are three qualities of intelligence, as brought to light in Maharishi's Rig Veda. Therefore, in the basis of code, we have 8 nucleotides in between the two space, 4 pairs, and then the ectoderm. The chorus pointing to 8 richer methods. This, of course, is a mathematical module that he has evolved, which needs for a scientist to look into it, and it exactly coincides. In other words, the start codons and stop codons plays a very crucial role in the existence of the individuals in the future. So the entire work for the scientists is still there to look at this codons function, which is going to be the future day for all of us to understand that. Of course, the fundamental double helix structure of DNA reflects the fundamental concept in Veda described by Maharishi's Vedic science. The two helices of especially DNA, are a mirror image of each other. One of the two is called template strand, and the other is called the coding strand. Of course, people, when they want to do a science, this is going to be the word that is going to be frequently coming in the world literature. That is the template strand and then the coding strand. The coding strand is a silent witness. I told you in the beginning itself, the silent witness is, remember, the silent witness is the ovum, and the movement is actually the sperm. The entire creation is there, the knowledge is there, the sequence is there, the codon is there, everything goes by step, and then realizes that it does not participate in the formation of messenger RNA. That is the silent witness. It simply maintains the memory of the sequence intact. So when you take the two helix, one helix is going to be a template strand, other is coding strand. The coding strand is a silence. The coding strand is silent but gives the real code, and it doesn't take part. Whereas the real first stand, the template stand, is very important. And under the nature performs, the other helix participates as a catalyst for the expression of information available in the DNA. It corresponds to the value of Prakriti. Now, the word Prakriti, of course, meaning really your understanding of the word, and then the DNA. When you are not able to understand the scientific picture of DNA, come back to the Veda and read it. You can connect between the two, and then you can give a combination for the two, and then you can do it. The structure of intelligence available in Veda has brought to light by Maharishi, and he says the four bases and the Saririshas, Devata. He has given a name for the constituents of the ACTG. We always call it as adenine and the guanosine and diamine. He has given a name for that, and that name really corresponds to the functioning of the whole system. And I want to see the start and stop codons of the Sahita, Rishi, Devata, and Chandas. Even more compelling comparison is the identification of the codon, and all relative values emerge from the codon as identical. As you have just an identical span in the DNA, these two can be seen as identical, and all aspects of Vedic literature and of the physiology are grouped in one of the three values, and all information in the DNA is punctuated by one of the three stop codons. See, this is the function of the stop codons. That's what he has come up to this. It requires the present day scientist to look at this and then work on heaviness. And it can be said the stop codons are the Rishi and Devata and Chanda. He goes on saying these three represents the real, what I call it as the intelligence of the DNA, which is given the name as Rishi, Devata, and Chandas. When you look at it, this is the 8 Prakriti in the DNA. The 8 Prakriti on the DNA is, we have to see another fundamental aspect of the natural law is 8 Prakriti. Introduced earlier in the other chapter by Maharishi in Vedic science, Prakriti are seen as a loop made up of 8 elements, looping back, especially into themselves. These are the most important point. One is ego, and then of course is the intellect, mind, space, followed by air, fire, water, and air. In other words, if you look at the whole creation, the அண்டத்தில் இருக்கிறதெல்லாம் பிண்டத்தில் இருக்கு. It is exactly the 5. நிலம், நீர், நெருப்பு, காற்று, ஆகாயம் is present in our body. And then you have the most important point is the ego, and then the intellect, mind, and space. When you look at the work of the whole human beings, first is awareness. The human existence is only because of the awareness. This awareness is coming only because of our intellect. And this intellect is literally stimulating the mind. And the mind is stimulating the brain. And the brain is stimulating the body. And the body reacts to the environment from which it is made up of. These 6, especially when you look at it, it is actually awareness to intellect to the mind to the brain to the body to the environment. The 6 factors operate all through the 8 particular Prakriti introduced, in which you see they are including the mind, intellect, and ego. When you want to give a definition for the mind is a web of thoughts in which the first strand of thought is I exist. This is well within the limits of the science to work for it. Once you get into the intellect, it is beyond science. Once you get into the awareness, it is beyond science. At the present point of time, we do not know, because when you look at the human brain, when we are looking at the human brain, the corticospinal tract, which has got 1 million fibers, literally explains the entire movement of our body, right from our thinking going up to the especially excretion. So the whole movement, of which the most brilliant neurotransmitter, I always call it, is dopamine, which is the Cinderella of the neurotransmitter, which plays a crucial role from the motivation to movement. This 1 million fibers called corticospinal tract controls the end movement. But the man is in possession of 10 million fibers of connection between the fronto cerebellar small brain. We have not yet fully understood this 10 million. It is strongly believed that the future lies in this 10 million fibers, which are going to open up our mind, intellect, etc. At the present point of time, it is beyond science. At the next point of time, just like people went into the quantum physics, once you get into the quantum science, probably you'll be able to explain much better than what you are today in explaining the whole sequence of this, both awareness and as well as the intellect. When you look at the whole part, the basic structure of DNA, we find that described previously, it is made out of 4 types of nucleotides based on 4 types of bases abbreviated as CDAG. They combine with their complementary bases to form the complementary helix. The compensatory bases are G, A, T, C respectively. We have noted that one of the 2 DNA helices, the coding strand, represent the silent transcendental value which does not participate directly in DNA expression. That is why we can assign to the 4 bases as unmanifest quality and 4 elements as pragritic, especially the pragritic ego, intellect, mind. In other words, when you are going to start analyzing the whole science, you have to take this into consideration and then work on it. The correlation between 40 aspects, of course, DNA continuously sensing and responding to every level of physiology of the mind and body, and last, matter enters into the consciousness, and consciousness is connected with the body and mind. Finally, the awareness. I think it is the awareness which is the most important thing. Awareness includes consciousness, and thereby you can literally appreciate what you're going to see. Finally, the awareness is the scientific data which is going to be either within the reach or it is beyond the reach. Now, the entire physiology is constructed on the basis of architectural design of DNA. So when you look at the physiology of what the physicians do, is based on A, the cell, B, the cell, all the cell organelles, and in the organelles you find the tubes. In the tubules you are able to identify the receptors, and then the receptors function together as a human being. Now, I have given the 40 minutes, and madam said we'll give 15 minutes for the talk. Of course, this is going to go endless with this, but I'm not stepping into the whole thing today. But remember, I'm just going to touch, these are all the different aspects of the Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Kalpa Veda. But I just wanted to finish my talk today. It's very interesting that the 12 rasis in DNA is also given a DNA component. This is much very, very important. The 12 rishis are, of course, the T base, G base, C base, A base, and all of them to cosmic counterpart. Aries characteristic is fire, earth, water, fire, earth, water. But remember, it has been fixed as the movable fixed dual when you look at the chart. And that 7 nakshatras are also connected to the DNA by the excellent, and Nyaya by this Samkhya, Yoga. Yoga and as well as the DNA is characterized by unifying quality of intelligence. See, there is no other way we can do that. Now we know by brain study, but if you maintain yoga, your normal consciousness is maintained by 9 to 13 cycles per second in the brain. The same 9 cycles is there in the, especially sun when it vibrates. This 9 to 13, it makes you constant. When the sheer meditation, what happens? In normal people, when you reach 5 to 8 wave, then you become drowsy. When you get less than 4, you become deep sleep. Even in these three states of sleep, your awareness is existing. Now, when you do meditation, when you get into fifth, when you get less than four, you are absolutely conscious. When you reach the brain frequency rate as 1.5 to 2.5, which we call it as, of course, autonomic nervous system comes under your beautiful control. You can raise your body temperature or you can lower your body temperature. This state is called epsilon state. This Tibetan lamas, they did it. And they also dried the highest blanket, put them in the Himalayas. And the time taken for them to dry it is called the Tumos effect. Now, with the meditation that you do, you can literally control the whole activity of the DNA, and the DNA in turn your bodily parts, and in turn into the physiology. And there is no longer what we call it as autonomic nervous system. It's not autonomic nervous system, it's autonomic dependent system due to perfection in meditation. Now, yoga into 4 chapters. Furthermore, the sets of gene DNA containing the information and then the structure of the association fibers of cerebral cortex also correspond to yoga in Vedic literature. Examples of the qualifying or unifying in DNA include eukaryocyte gene regulatory proteins often assemble into small complexes in DNA. Proteins that bind to the 5 leader regions of mRNA mediate negative translational control. This is the first time a man has hypothesized, especially when you do the meditation and come into the level of 1.5 to 2.5, either in the epsilon state or when you really do it in the deep samadhi state. This is the lovely explanation that is being offered, which has to be amply proved by different centers of the world, in the entire world. Base pairing underlying DNA replication was in DNA repair. This is how the unifying quality of intelligence available in the Vedic literature in yoga is found to be available in DNA. In other words, what has been beautifully described in yoga is counterpart with the DNA. And if you follow the procedures that have been given beautifully, you can literally control the system in which you have been made of. In other words, a perfect meditation can give you a total release from the organ control, and you can do it beautifully. So, yoga is going to be the future day for all of us. And just like what we call it as Om sound, sound can modify our controls. And once you are in deep silence, we now advocate that every school should practice 15 minutes silence before they start their work, instead of the real another way of saying something in the talk. Allow them to just go for 15 minutes silence. We have now proved beyond doubt that the urbanization of the temporal lobe connections have increased, and that results in the especially improvement in mathematics and science. And hence, every school henceforth should practice silence for 15 minutes rather than the talk. Now, this is available in the DNA. It's also able to every cell in the body and in the physiology. Now, this is something which is very great, that people should concentrate on the meditation and its effect on the system. Karma Mimamsa, I'm not getting into it. Vedanta in DNA, of course, is characterized by absolute. Gandharva Veda, Dhanur Veda, Satpati Veda, Harita Samhita, Bel Samhita, and Kashyapa Samhita, and Saraka Samhita and Samhita with Vaigabhat Samhita and the Madhav Nidan Samhita. All of them are beautifully described in the book. Upanishad in the DNA, I just concentrate on that. This is something, Upanishad is characterized by the transcendenting quality of intelligence. DNA acts as a stable and silent reference points for all the physiological activity. The 10 aspects of DNA described earlier and also correspond to the 10 Upanishads, furthermore, set genes. This is the point. The satellite DNA sequences have no known function. It is not yet possible to predict the DNA sequence recognized by gene regulatory means. That means we have reached the stage, DNA regulation we don't know, but we are not able to pinpoint, because when you come into the system, macroscopic system, science is perfect. When it comes into the microscopic quantum physics, both the place and then the velocity we cannot measure together at the same time. This is something which is still troubling the minds of scientists. How can they say where the particle will go and how it will behave? It's very difficult. But one thing that we know, when you get the particle which is upside down, When you separate the particle to even 10,000 miles, and when you artificially revert the sign, automatically the 10,000 miles particle comes into the opposite direction. This is something which science is still wondering how this happens miles apart. And this is where, of course, this Upanishad is only talking on the intelligence of the individuals. And the sum total of intelligence is actualized is the 10 characteristics of the DNA, which has been described well in fact. Aranyak, of course, in DNA, Brahmana in the DNA, Itihasa in DNA, Purana, Smriti, everything contains the whole particle of the DNA really plays a very beautiful role. What is the objective of this particular method? Why we should know this DNA and then the really the meaning between the DNA and as well as the Vedas? What is the usefulness? Discovery of the unlimited reservoir of energy and intelligence that we possess within the physiology of everyone. Scientifically validated programs to harness this energy and intelligence for all possibles of daily life. In other words, we must live in good health, happy health, and as well as helping others. And I always believe that Vedas are the really stepping stone for us to understand much better than the DNA. And once you understand the DNA, you don't think that you are understanding the DNA better, because Vedas implicitly obeys and then makes the whole gene to act, and they are intermingling with each other. And I just want to complete by saying once again the repeat of what Schrodinger said. One, becoming is conscious. We are all conscious of the process of the intelligence, but being the intelligence, I think you'll be silent, you'll be unconscious for that. From the medical angle, from the neural angle, I think we need a lot of study to implicate our ancient Vedas and compare it with the DNA molecules, how they stand together. It's a human effort, but human mind is a very curious mind. It will never ever stop with analyzing the others. And only thing is we should get merged into two. And I want to finish by only again saying each moment is an inspiration until we expire. Thank you. Yeah.
In the initial stage of evolution, environment played very important role as per Darwin. The latter stage, the culture played vital role in the development of our mind and intellect and emotion. Especially. I want to know where does this genes DNA goes.
As we rightly said, the DNA starts from all living objects, including the what we can call now the human beings. If it has to role a play. It's only a web. You can start from all the living animals that we know. The differentiation between the living animal and non-living animal is this four-letter code, and this starts in DNA. We have not yet understood. We have understood that the human beings are supreme. No, when you look at the work of an ordinary person, because our great scientist, he said, when you go and sing to the especially the vegetable is growing better. And he also said when you go and then take part with and talk with them, they go better. And so it is always the environment, the gene and then the environmental are placed. You have to have the gene playing a role and then the environment. If the gene is of an excellent one, but if the environmental is bad, he doesn't success. If the environment is extremely good, but the gene factor is absent, he cannot come up very well. So this is the point of at which I said all living beings should have a DNA concept. That letter has not changed, but there is an interesting scientific work. There is a this particular four-letter word is changing in some in non-living things, and that is becomes a different point. Answering to your primary point, in the beginning, the human beings, it takes time for the whole process to come into become a human being. And some of them, they say it has come from the one-layered creature to the human being. The other way of thinking is each and every place, the simultaneous growth takes place. Some of them are like human beings, some of them are like. So it is always the course that always say there is a line which is drawn called Huxley's line. There, the plants, the human beings, everything are formed in the according to some religious thought that everything appears. And when we are looking at it with our eye, everything is false. Simple experiment, science experiment. When you allow the light to pass through a narrow, it produces only one shadow in the ground. When you look at then it becomes two. That means what you observed as a particle becomes a wave. In other words, your consciousness literally plays a crucial role in the march past itself. So it is a mixture of all the events that is taking place. So it's very, very difficult to accept that first the 10 avatars, they are trying to include it under the 10, but different places of time. The time operates only when we operate in 3 dimensions. This has been proved beyond doubt. All of us, when we operate in 3 dimensions, in which case the time varies, the space varies. When you get into 4th or the 5th dimension, the time stops and the whole space stops. In which case, when I look at it from the 5th dimension to you, there is no such thing as a development which we see yesterday, today, and tomorrow. We call it as Trigyan and Yani. There are so many people who have achieved into the 4th or 5th standard. When you come and then they can easily predict your past, present, and future. So you can't say that this happened in one way. I think the Darwin's theory was with regard to the science, but our science Vedic model is exactly the sound. The sound vibration decides the object. Chair has got a vibration. I have got a vibration. He has got a vibration. All of them produces different ways. So it is made simultaneously according to our thinking of Vedas. But only thing is, in some people, the human beings came, in some the animals came. And some of them extinguished, some of them distinguished itself in their own ways. But the time operates only for 3-dimensional people. For a person who operates in 4th dimension, where is the time? Then that particular thing goes off automatically, the theory of Darwin. No. When you operate in 5th dimension, then we think it is truth. No. We have not yet understood. Example for that is I already gave you your project image, Advaitic being, that is our eyes. Now the science has come to a stage where what we see is also not real. For example, you go and touch a person next to you. All the areas in the brain are stimulated in you. And the man who sees you touching a person, his brain is also fully activated. How is it activated? Unless we operate in a uniformity of the gene structures and emitting of the whole phenomenon. And this operates only in his brain. So when we cut the sensation that is going to the brain, then when I go and touch somebody person, he also feels that he is being touched. So this is what I call it as the beginning story of understanding our own awareness. And that awareness only gives you science. And this science is dependent on your consciousness. And your consciousness is dependent on your whole mechanism of operable through your DNA, RNA mechanisms. And this helps us to distinguish A for creation and B for improvement in your thinking, and C, above all, joining with the own beginning. So till such time concept operates, you can appreciate your point. When you operate in 4th or 5th dimension, it automatically falls through. Yeah. Exactly. The other person. Instead of saying science does not know, science interprets only. But science cannot give the, because it is based on our DNA system. Integrate. Yeah, you accept it. Acceptance itself comes from your consciousness. The other consciousness will say definitely not. So you don't try to prove. That's why the Jain system, he says, after 5 minutes of argument, they say you are right, I'm also right, we'll close it. No, there are two sets. The consciousness is in the brainstem. There is a cycle going from the, what we call it as thalamocortical circuit, that decides the awareness of, the consciousness of yours. This is physiological definition. When you are mixing the other consciousness is a part of awareness, which is beyond science. So when you think it that way, now we have now known that an unconscious person, when he sees his wife or the husband case maybe, the same areas in the brain are activated. He is unconscious, he doesn't respond, but his brain is activated. That interpretation of the brain input is absent in him. And hence we say he is unconscious. But we can't say that he is not conscious, because he is reacting in the same way that a normal person reacts when he sees his wife. So physiologically, yes, that consciousness, once you take it from a Vedic angle, then it becomes totally different, because our consciousness consists of 4 stages. One is, of course, waking state, second is sleeping state, third is, of course, the fourth state is Turiya state. In Turiya state is, once again, is where absolutely there is no I. Whereas the previous one, you had a deep sleep state, your awareness was existing. Otherwise, you can't say the next day I had a lovely sleep. You can't say that. So once into Turiya state, the I goes off. So accepting your point that it is there, but science, operates only at the macroscopic level. At the microscopic level, is as ambiguous as our religious thinking.
Beyond that, we are not again. I say, but this vasana enters into the body. I will not give it.
Now the question arises, what is the one that moves? Our Atma is up. It's like an energy. It goes from one energy into, one place to another place. So that does not take the whole process of the body, only takes energy. That is the reason why between the Advaita and the Visishtadvaita, Ramanujar said in a different way, and said that is why he said it's a qualified Advaita, where he says the entire world is his body, which our Advaita does not say that. Entire world, if it is going to be the body, then Perumal decides the creation and the destruction. So, no, I'm just coming to that point. It goes for destruction and construction for the soul. But for the, once you get into the next, Sthula body and then Sushma body. Sushma body has no rebirth. Yes, Sthula body, yes. In which case, where the question that is asked, whether we'll carry that is, otherwise the operation of karma is only that. We strongly believe in karma, so whatever he does it, that goes with his energy. After all, whatever he goes is also a thought. Thought is also an energy. Basically, when the science comes into 2 parts, either it is matter or it is energy, or it is particle or energy. But once you get into that state, is the matter going? No, it's the energy that moves out. And that energy gets into another energy and then forms a body. The body is not taking it. So in that respect, your question is, will it take it? Yes, it does take it. All our samskaras definitely go. I just always say this, astrology. There are 12 planets. There are 12 places. 360 points. There are 9 grahas. 270 points. God is already taking 90 points in his hand and then operates. or nature. Some people, they don't know. So this 90 points is already with him. That is only for the karma points. I always strongly believe that the law, at least some of them have said that the last thought is your first birth, rebirth. And that thought is also a vibration. And that vibration, along with that, this vibration also goes. I strongly believe in that. I accept with you. You're thinking, I'm only saying that the sthula body is extinguished. Sushma body, yes. That is why when we go to Tirupati, we always pray to Swami in the Garbhagriha. After seeing the Sthula Sarira, you come out and then stand in the Vimana and then pray to Perumal that you accept my Sushma Sarira at your feet. That is their faith. Well, that's why when you come off Tirumala, you pray to that Vimana Venkateshwara. My Sushma's body should come and then join with you. That is their objective. But our Advaita say the other thing was, Am Brahmasmi. When the I is taken, you become a God.
Namaskaram, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. AVS on AVS, on ancient Vedic science, AVS given. It's an hour of. It only shows that how so many things are there, we are just not aware of it. There's a great Vedic saying that the body is a temple. Deho devalaha prokto. We never understand our own body. And he says that there are so many things in the body. He mentioned about the DNA structure, and I was amazed at some of the things he mentioned. The double, double helical DNA, how it winds up around the central axis. This is exactly what Vedas says, that Narayana Suktam, basically, they say that whole thing around the deep, small energy flickering in the center of the body. So this is what exactly he mentioned that. And he mentioned about 64 triplets responsible for energy creation, the root base. This is more in our system, how 64 is given as a very important part in our whole Vedic psychology. In fact, Gayatri Mantram is basically 64 times we meet that. 64 basically gives that particular energy creation. I was fascinated at many of the things, but how the coding strand stands as a silent witness. This is exactly what the Vedic says. But Ramana Maharshi's basic thing is just be. Be a silent witness. Because as a coding strand, you watch it. Your own body. So, Doctor, this is an amazing lecture today. But many of us are not, or scientifically very, inappropriate crowd for you to talk about your knowledge basis. But it gives you a small inkling of how deep things are. Just this morning I met one gentleman who is working in Texas. I asked him, what are you doing? I'm doing a DNA editing. So he says that deep therapy is a new scientific development in USA. Many companies are doing it, trying to understand and take out the DNA within you and then reprogram it and putting it back. He says they are working on this one, and we are on this in a mission. It's a biochemistry specialization person. And he says that this is so many things are still to be unraveled, but this offers a huge potential for future development, especially for disease control and disease neutralization. But I was only laughing within myself. We are playing with the nature. The nature gives you the DNA composition. The nature has basically worked over the entire composition. I was only reminded lastly how in Dakshinamurti Stotram, the ninth sloham, or the Acharya mentioned that is the whole body, the whole system is basically then in the eight aspects of it. The five Panchabhutas, sun, moon, and the jiva inside. These are the 8 things constitute everything. Budham Bamsi Analo Dilombaramar Nado Himam Suphaman. That particular sloka basically encapsulates that you are just annam se pindam underthan pindam edukirathu. So you are is the human body is a manifestation of the whole spirit. In fact, our elders used to say 33 கோடி தேவர்கள் இருக்கான்னு சொல்லுவா, 330 million devatas. They are nothing but our tissues in the body. The whole thing is, you can imagine how each one is imbued with energy and driving us. Doctor, it's an amazing thing we learned today. I only say that at the end of it, I'm reminded of the last sloka in Saundara Lahari, that we are saying that, but ultimately what makes us say is the divine power. What the words come out or what we think is nothing but the huge, the grace of the divinity, the Ambal. So there's we say Purnamidam Pursad. The whole things remain, and we all part of the big whole on this one. I once again thank you from on behalf of Tattvaloka for this great thing. Many of you may know that Tattvaloka publishes articles of this nature. We carry regular articles on Ayurveda, and in fact, somebody mentioned the Sushruta Samhita. He mentioned in the last issue how Sushruta Samhita talks about very essential body aspects on which the Ayurveda is built on this. There's one Ayurveda doctor who did our intention, God willing, Acharya willing, is to arrange one seminar here with Dr. AVS propounding the allopathic aspect of it, and a reputed Ayurvedic doctor talking about from Ayurvedic point of it and expounding the physiology from different two perspectives. We'll do that once again. Once again, thanks for coming. We wish this particular thing is attended by larger number of audience, but this is because of thanks to the change in the timing from last week because of cyclone, and many people are not aware of it. But hopefully we'll have a bigger audience and bigger thing to benefit from this kind of knowledge. Thank you, Doctor. All the very best. Namaskaram.